All right, welcome back to another edition of Baseball for Maniacs. I'm here with my buddy Ryan. Last night I did the solo pod. Good to see you. But we're just going to go through our five most overrated baseball players. Now, granted, we're not haters. Yes, we are. But this is just in the sense of what the media and like the baseball community thinks of them. There's so many times in baseball where you either overrate a player or you underrate a player. There's also instances where a player is so underrated they become overrated, and then vice versa. It's like Julio Rodriguez. He was so overrated, and now he's completely underrated. So I have one honorable mention. Ryan has two. So this is just me trolling. Genuinely is. I got Juan Soto. Now, talent on the field, he's not overrated. He's one of the best hitters of all time. I just think from a pure money standpoint in his contract, he's not worth the contract. Now, everyone kind of knew that because 800 or 755 million, which will get up to 800 with incentives, is insane work for someone who's going to be a DH in 4 to 5 years. Now, me personally, I've always been on the mindset I'm never going to fault an ownership for paying for the guy they want, even if it's Steve Cohen, because if it's just money, then it doesn't really matter because you're bringing on an elite talent. But with the way the Mets are operating now, it makes you think like, oh, did signing Juan Soto mean you don't bring back Pete Alonso? You don't bring back Edwin Diaz? And if that's the case, and that's what they're showing us, it's a mistake. Now, if they just kept spending like money out of their ass and like gave Pete 150, gave Edwin 100 million, this wouldn't matter because Steve Cohen's pockets are deeper than anyone's in Major League Baseball. I just think he's not worth the contract. He never will be. And I think him getting that big contract kind of screwed like Kyle Tucker because I don't think anyone wants to give that contract out anymore. Because it's like, I bet Kyle Tucker's agent is going and saying, well, if Soto got $800 million, Kyle Tucker's worth 500. Juan Soto is not a $300 million better player than Kyle Tucker is, but on the vice versa, Kyle Tucker's not worth 500 million. So you see where it's kind of screwed up the whole market. But thanks Scott Boras for that. Thank Steve Cohen for that. Don't blame Scott. I blame Cohen. But he's my honorable mention.
I understand why you did that. I don't think you really believe that,
I
but
I know it was just from a purely financial situation. If the Phillies gave Juan Soto $2 billion, I would not be complaining. But it's just like I kind of wanted to put it on that angle, and that's why I made him my honorable mention and not in the top five list.
that's fair. I have two honorable mentions. One is kind of an obvious one that I feel like is like on a lot of overrated lists, and then one is going to be very controversial, I feel. So
Okay.
I'll start with the one that probably everybody has, and it's Luis Arias, batting average merchant, everybody's favorite little slap hitter nowadays. Yeah, the guy can average 320 for a whole season, but his last season specifically in 25, his OPS was 719. And this is a guy that they talked about being in MVP talks because he had half a season where he hit 400 and then he fell off of a cliff, and I think he still had like a 330 average, which is very good. But one thing that we've learned, and one thing that I'm very high on, batting average does not matter as much as it used to. And
Yeah.
Luis Arias is one of those guys that he doesn't show that batting average doesn't matter because I mean, he's good at what he does. He's going to get you the little slap singles, but he's not going to really drive anybody. He doesn't really have the power to get it over the fence. He's someone that plays it down the lines more often than not, which is good. It's worked out for his whole career. Wherever he ends up, he's going to be a 290 to 310 hitter. However, in today's MLB, that's not going to cut it. Even if you're hitting 265, 270, you've got to add 25 to 30 nukes along with that. Your on base percentage has to be close to, if not over 300. So it's like, and his on base percentage is only in the 300s because his batting average is so high. I feel like if he hit 240, we'd be seeing his on base percentage be more of like a 270 or a 280. Maybe I'm blind on Arias, but that's what. But he's overrated in that state because I remember them talking about him getting MVP votes, and that's ridiculous to me.
Can I jump in on a rise? You know what's crazy? He wouldn't be so overrated if he was a average defender. He was terrible at second base. They plugged him at first base. Can you imagine if he was just a slightly above infielder? His WAR would go crazy, but he doesn't play any defense. And you mentioned the on base percentage. He doesn't walk. He just hits. So it's like it's he's a valuable major league player to enliven him. I think if he joins a team in playoff contention, he can really help them, like the Phillies. There's not a fit for him, but if he was in that lineup to where he can mix up the power with getting on base, he's very valuable. It's just like what you said. Him getting MVP consideration was like out of the world. Like there's no chance that was happening. So I like that pick a lot.
So now my controversial one. I feel like you're gonna have a problem with this,
Oh boy, is
but
it? Oh,
no, it's not actually. But I feel like it's somebody that I think you and I have talked about before and said has promise. But just because they have promise doesn't mean that they're not currently overrated in today's MLB. And with that being said, you talked about Julio Rodriguez, and it's somebody who's very similar to Julio Rodriguez. Jackson Churio is criminally overrated. And maybe it's because I have a thing with hype job young athletes coming up, and maybe I think he came up too early. He had the pretty much the exact same season from his rookie season. He had the same amount of home runs. His OPS actually was 21 points less than his rookie season. If you want me to get specific about it, he had a 2.2 WAR, which again he had a very average season. But what was this guy's expectations coming into MLB? The exact same that Julio Rodriguez had. This guy was looked at as the Brewers' savior. And maybe he is. I don't watch a lot of Brewers baseball. Maybe he really is that much better in game. I haven't seen much of Jackson Churio. And I know he torched the Red Sox whenever we played the Brewers. I remember watching him hit a couple of home runs, I think, in Fenway Park. Either way, I'm not salty about that. I just don't think he's lived up to the expectation that he's supposed to have. He's had the ceiling as high as you could possibly have it. And yeah, he's still climbing. He's still young. He can get to that point. But the way that they talked about him and the way that he was supposed to be hitting and fielding when he got brought up, you'd think he'd be in MVP talks his rookie season, but he wasn't. And you'd think he'd be in MVP talks his last season, but he wasn't. And it's not that I dislike Jackson Churio. I want to be wrong when it comes to him because I really do like him. But because of how he was talked about on his way up, and because how he was supposed to be this and supposed to be that immediately out of the gate, he's overrated.
so I disagree, but I also understand where you're coming from. I think he's a victim of the hype. Like, no matter what he did, he wasn't going to live up to those expectations. But I think he's going to win an MVP because I think he has that dog mentality. I think this year he struggled a little bit with injury. Don't quote me on that because, like you, I don't watch Brewers baseball. Sorry, Brewers fans. But what he did against the Mets in that wild card series, even though we lost, I saw that killer. I saw that dog in him. And I think he's going to have one of these years where he's fully healthy and he hits like 35 nukes. He has an OPS in the thousands. So I think right now your point can be kind of valid, but I'm very high on Jackson Churio. But that's why we have the podcast so we can disagree. And then let's just get into it. For my number 5, Adley Rutschman. So obviously with the Phillies, with JT, there's been talks about if we let him go, oh, sign Adley. I've seen so many comments. JT Realmuto is better than he had the last 2 years, even though Realmuto is on the decline. Let me see his freaking baseball savant. So I know this year he had a 673 OPS. Now, if that was just a fluke year, okay, one bad year. Last in 2024, he had a 709 OPS. So I think this is a trend. I For what he does in the catching position, he's valuable. But he was drafted number 1 overall, right? He's not
He was.
worth that number 1 overall pick. And how about this, baseball executives? Don't draft a catcher with your first overall pick. You know who was the last catcher? Well, the last catcher drafted number 1 overall. It wasn't
It was
Rutschman.
Bryce, wasn't it?
No, Henry Davis from your beloved Pittsburgh Pirates. Henry Davis sucks, and I wish him well. Wish him well. And you know why the Pittsburgh Pirates drafted number 1 overall? Slot value. They saved money. That's why I hate the Pittsburgh Pirates, because they have a number one overall pick and they're penny pinching. So, but Bryce Harper before Adley Rutschman was the last catcher. I think there has only been 3 catchers drafted number one overall in the last 3 years: Rutschman, Davis, and Harper. And everyone knew Harper wasn't going to stick at catcher. The last number one overall pick that was a catcher that worked out, it was in 2001. Can you guess who it was?
2001. Joe Mauer.
Yep. And obviously, Joe Mauer is a freaking stud Hall of Famer, Mr. Twin, right? So he obviously was worth it. But you have to be so sure with your number one overall pick as a catcher. And Adley's, he's not that great defensively. Like, he DHs a lot. So that's why I think Baltimore's going to keep him and mix him with Samuel Basallo, probably botched that name. I don't think either one of them are everyday catchers, so I think they're going to keep him. I just don't think Adley Rutschman is good anymore. I think he's a great kid. If he is catching for your team and he's not making too much money, he's worth it. But just the whole hype around him in Major League Baseball, he's completely overrated in my opinion.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from. I want to believe in Adley Rutschman because, like, I like the idea of a catcher being able to hit well. I like the idea of a switch hitting catcher being able to mash. I'm getting that in Cal Raleigh. So it's nice to kind of see that. I'm trying to remember some of the players that were in the draft with Adley Rutschman. I'm pretty sure Shea Langoliers was in that draft, and Phillies legend Bryson Stott, I think, was in that
Yes,
draft
sir.
class as well.
Let me just take a
But
look to draft it in the top 5 real quick. Oh, not a draft analysis. Oh
I
yeah.
think the
So it
Twins
was
had I think
Bobby
the
Witt.
Twins had Bobby Witt.
He was drafted number 2 by the Royals. So the Orioles could have had Bobby Witt. So that was a freaking mistake. Let's see who else. Number 3. Oh, come on, dude. They show me all these freaking ads. Andrew Vaughn, he sucks. JJ Day, he freaking sucks. Put him out of freaking draft. I'll just do 2 more. Riley Green is good, but he strikes out too much. CJ Abrams, Nick Lodolo. So it was really Bobby Witt or Adley. They decided to go catcher. So don't draft a catcher number 1 overall. That's the point of this whole freaking episode.
I will say Nick Lodolo, stud.
He's
Forgive me, my
good.
stutter came out on that one. But now, moving on to my number 5. It's a former Oriole, but it's somebody who was kind of riddled with injuries, and we didn't see him in the ALCS for this team. Now, maybe he would have went off if he didn't get hurt again, but who knows? But because of the contract that he got going to the team and the way he wasn't able to contribute, Anthony Santander slides into my number 5 in my overrated list. Now, this isn't for a lack of loving Anthony Santander. I just talked about how much I like switch hit bats. It doesn't specifically stay with catchers. I think if you can hit well from both sides of the plate, it's something special. I like switch hit bats, and Anthony Santander couldn't only hit well from both sides of the plate, he had elite power from both sides of the plate, which is more of a rarity. Obviously, we just saw Cal Raleigh have the season that he had, but before that, who was really the switch hitter with power? Anthony Santander. You can't really name another guy that was a switch hitter with power outside of Chipper Jones. I can't anyway. I can't remember a switch hitter that had that much pop.
Maybe Lindor, but Lindor the right side pretty heavily. So yeah.
And even then, if I'm a casual, let me know. If I'm missing out on a huge switch hit bat that had a bunch of pop, let me know. I think that Anthony Santander is due for a bounce back year, but when you have a 565 OPS, his average was 175, and he had 18 nukes in that 175 average. So it's a really a two true outcome kind of guy when you look at Anthony Santander. A -1 WAR on the 2025 season, but again, he was injured for a good portion of it. Maybe if he was healthy, the season would be better. Who knows? But based on what I've just seen, looking at baseball reference and getting the numbers that I got, I hate to say it, but Anthony Santander is an overrated player.
So I completely freaking agree. So I don't like Anthony Santander because, well, one, I'm a certified hater, but I saw this video of him in a rehab assignment. I think it was this year. He hits a nuke, right? Obviously, AAA rehab assignment. He has power. But he was like, the way he trotted around the bases, like he was going slow. And people in the comments, because I posted on TikTok, were like, oh, he's injured. if Ryan, go look up that video at the end of this podcast and see how slow he was walking. It gave me vibes of him just like, I'm better than you guys. I shouldn't even be on this field. And I remember when he was a free agent, there were some rumors about Philly maybe making a ploy for him. And I posted, do not sign Anthony Santander. You want to know why? Because he only had an OPS over 800 once in his career because he doesn't walk. If you don't walk, you're not a good hitter. Same way with Luis Ariz. He's a good hitter, but he's not the full package. So I completely agree. I don't like Anthony Santander. Now, this might be, for my number 4, might be very controversial. Stephen Kwan. And it has everything to do with how they hyped him up in the trade market. There were people in Philly saying trade Andrew Painter or Aiden Miller for Stephen Kwan. Do you want to know what Stephen Kwan's OPS was in 2025? Take a guess.
Probably he's not. He doesn't have that much pop. I don't really know what his walking is. But 760.
705. And he walks like 705. So what he's always going to do, he plays a gold glove left field. He's a phenomenal defender. But his career OPS is 741. If Stephen Kwan is batting leadoff in your lineup for a winning team, that's completely fine. He's going to get on base. He's going to do that kind of stuff. He's going to accumulate positive WAR every single year. It's just more that the fact that people were willing to make Stephen Kwan our big trade deadline acquisition for trading Andrew Painter, I think is ridiculous. Now, if he I think if he gets traded to like the Dodgers, he's probably gonna like go off. Like he's a good player, but he's not worth like the hype that he has. And it all comes back to, dude, if you're not hitting at least 25, 30 homers, you're not going to be an elite hitter. You never will be. You can be a valuable hitter in a lineup, especially a stacked lineup. Now, maybe if he goes to a better team besides the Guardians, to where he has a little more protection, maybe he taps into that. Maybe he hits a 25 homer, 30 homer. Maybe. I'm not a big Stephen Kwan guy. Not at all.
I disagree with that one entirely. I think Stephen Kwan is genuinely one of those guys that we're gonna look back on when he retires, and we're gonna be like, "Wow, that dude could hit." He reminds me of somebody like Michael Brantley in a way. I love the way that he swings the bat. I love the way that he fields it, and I think he would have genuinely thrived in Philadelphia. I
I
I
do, but
understand that no, not for Andrew Painter. I don't think that would have happened regardless. But I don't know. I don't think Stephen Kwan is overrated. I think he's the perfect. I think he's the best leadoff hitter in baseball if we're looking at traditional leadoff guys. And I don't agree with that one. That
you
sounds like,
you love
see, to
705
me
OPS.
it like genuinely, to me it sounds like you wanted him really bad, and it was a little upset that you didn't get him, and you're like, he's not that good anyway.
He had a 705 OPS. Like the stats don't lie. He's good, but he's not great. And you know who we got at the deadline? We got Harrison freaking Bader. And I'm so happy with that. But yeah, I don't think Stephen Kwan's good. But yeah, that's why I like having these discussions. We disagree. It's all in good fun.
And also, before I go to my number 4, not to harp back on Adley Rutschman going number 1 in that draft. Later on, pick 16 was Corbin Carroll, and then a couple of picks later was George Kirby. So there were a couple of options that you look back on and you're like, they could have had a couple of studs. But hindsight's always
Yeah,
2020. He was the right pick at the time,
yeah, yeah.
even with Bobby Witt. Adley Rutschman was at
He
the
was
time generational.
he was a consensus number 1 overall pick. So like if they didn't take him at the time, they would have got crucified. But granted, it would have looked better down the road. But you're right, he was a consensus.
And now moving on to my number 4. I think this guy might be near and dear to Owen's heart just because of his time in Atlanta. But I got Jock
Ooh.
Peterson.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't like Jock Peterson. I think he's a douchebag. I think he's another one of those guys that's like a two true outcome kind of guy. And he's not good at either one. He didn't play all that much. I don't know if he got hurt. I don't know if he just fell off of a cliff in general and just stopped getting at bats. I don't care. I never really thought he was that good to begin with. I didn't like him when he was on the Dodgers. I didn't think he deserved the contract that he got when he was in free agency. I think Jock Peterson is a criminal thief, a career criminal thief who steals money from organizations to be a platoon bat. And yeah, maybe he shows up in October every now and then, and maybe he's just somewhat special when it comes to October. I think the only time we're going to remember Jock Peterson is that he was on the same high school football team as Devontae Adams. I think that is going to end up being his career highlight. I don't think there's much to look at when it comes to Jock Peterson. Sure, he can hit moonshots. He can hit it a lot further than I can hit it. But when you have a negative .3 WAR and you're supposed to be like this difference making bat in a lineup that definitely needed a little bit of pop, you're not good. You're not as good as you're supposed to be for an organization that needed you to be the guy that you portrayed yourself to be. So that's why Jock Peterson slides into my number 4.
So Jocktober didn't do it for you in 2021 with the Pearls.
Dude, screw Jocktober.
So I get where you're coming from. So me personally, I think Jock Peterson at his best is a, like you said, a platoon bat. Spending that kind of money on a platoon bat is a mistake because he's only going to hit right-handed pitching. But man, what he did for the Braves, and I hate the Atlanta Braves. That shit was cold, brother. Like that was tough what he did. But I completely understand where you're coming from. He has that personality to where either you love him or you hate him.
And I can't stand him. There's just something about him. I don't know if it's the way he talks. I don't know if it's the way he swings a bat. I don't know if it's the way he warms up. But Jock Peterson, I don't like him. He could have made my disliked players list if I'm being honest, but I left him off just for the fact that Jocktober did happen and he brought excitement into the game. But in the grand scheme of things,
Gotcha. No, I got you there. All right, so my number three is going to be Mackenzie Gore from the Washington Nationals. It's just the talk of like his trade value, like he has 2 more years of control. He's not bad, but he's not good. His career ERA is 4.19. In 2025, he had a 4.17 ERA. So he's a good pitcher, but he's not great. He on a phenomenal rotation is your number 3, 4. On a good rotation, he's like 2 or 3. He's never going to be your ace because his innings pitched per start in 2025 was 5.3. That's baby numbers. You're basically taxing the bullpen the entire time you're doing it. So I don't think he's that good. It's just I wouldn't trade for him if I had to give up any of my top 5 prospects. Maybe if I gave up like number 5 and a couple like back end top 10, maybe. I just don't think he's that good. I never think he's going to be an ace. The way they talk about him with his strikeout rate, and me personally, I despise strikeout rate if that's your number one quality. I like strikeout rate if you're going deep into games. Because what happens if you're striking everyone out? You're done by the 4th or 5th inning. It looks cool. Your stuff is freaking nasty. But I like pitchers that go out, take the ball, and go give me 7 or 8. Give me 7 or 8 in a playoff game. Because how many pitchers can do that now? You can count them on your hand. Garrett Crochet, Tarek Skubal, Christopher Sanchez, Zach Wheeler, Yamamoto. Okay, maybe more than 5. Blake Snell. But it comes down to the point. I like my pitchers that just go out and pitch the freaking game like they did in old school. Go pitch a complete game. Mackenzie Gore's never going to do that in a playoff game, let alone a regular season game. So that's why he's number 3 for me. I think he's good, but for the hype around him, he's not great.
I don't want to agree with you because I like Mackenzie Gore, but I respect where you're coming from with that. I don't have much of a Mackenzie Gore
Yeah.
sample size. He's not in my division. I don't watch much Nationals baseball. So you've had a bit more of a sight on him than I have whenever the Phillies go to Washington or when Washington comes into CBP. But I would like to think that Mackenzie Gore can be that. I think some of those numbers might be situational. If you look at Garrett Crochet's numbers before he got to Boston, they weren't necessarily stellar. But, maybe this is the change of
Yeah.
scenery that he needs, and he can be that guy.
Yeah. So player that I kind of compare him to where I think he can make the next step is Jesus Luzardo. Because Luzardo, he had a 4 ERA this year, but he had two terrible starts. It was back to back where he gave up, I think it was like 20 runs in 2 games. Like it was a freaking nightmare. So that will skew the ERA. I think McKenzie did have a couple blow up starts, but I think he possibly can ascend to that because, like I said, the stuff is great. But I think if he learns to pitch a little bit more, pitch to contact, he can ascend. I'm just making this ranking based on what he is currently. But I do like his potential. I just want to trade top 5 prospects to see if that potential pans out.
Now, I feel the same way about the guy I got on my number 3. This is somebody else who I think you're going to disagree with me with because he was supposed to go to the Phillies at some point to fill a void that was left by another outfielder. I don't like Brenton Doyle. I don't think he's
Okay.
really that good. I genuinely think he's Johan Rojas because when you look at the numbers, the guy hit 233. Sure, he had 15 nukes, but he had a 651 OPS. I don't know if he got hurt at any point and his numbers look bad because of that. But if you're trading for a guy specifically because you needed a glove in the outfield, but he's not that great of a hitter, you literally just had that. You have that in Johan Rojas. Why not be a little bit more patient with Rojas instead of trading for the exact same thing? Brenton Doyle is getting the numbers that he's getting and having the seasons that he's having because he's on the Rockies. Who exactly do the Colorado Rockies have besides Brenton Doyle? They just got Matt Holliday's other son, Ethan, right? It's Ethan Holliday that just got drafted.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
Yeah, and he's probably going to get fast tracked all the way up to the majors just because A, he's a holiday, and B, the Rockies have absolutely nothing. Brenton Doyle may have been a top prospect in that organization. So is Michael Tolia. And I know maybe some of you are thinking, who the hell is Michael Tolia? Exactly. So at the end of the day, Brenton Doyle does bring value with the glove. But when you talk about somebody who was supposed to be a centerpiece in an outfield that is a World Series contender, you're not going to get there with a 651 OPS or a .01 WAR, regardless of how many diving catches you can make and how many putouts you can get from the outfield. Fantastic fielder. Hope he can turn his bat around and shut me up. But at the end of the day, he's not as good. He's my Stephen Kwan. The way that you look at the way you look at Stephen Kwan is the way that I look at Brenton Doyle.
Gotcha. So I completely agree because everything you said is factual. I just I think where you're coming from is the hype around him is kind of like that. Like when I pursued or wanted the Phillies to trade for him as a Harrison Bader replacement, I was under the notion that he is a glove first defender. I just think his bat has way more upside than Johan Rojas. So Brenton Doyle's best season was 2024, right? And I think he had like a 750 OPS. Now he is a Coors Field merchant. We know the stats. But I just think if he gets, because he had a really good second half, if he can hit you anywhere from like maybe 270, 280, 750 OPS. What he provides with the glove, that is a 4-win to 5-win player. But we're just going to have to see where he goes in 2026. But I can understand where you're coming from. And then for my number 2, O'Neal Cruz of your beloved Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, let me preface this by saying I do not despise the Pirates. I love the fans. I love the stadium. Bucktober is a real thing. I don't hope it happens again, so I don't have to pay that money. Um, but it's just O'Neal Cruz is not a good baseball player. He's not. He had a 676 OPS last year. He had a 0 OAA outs above average. Now that means he's just an average defender because they moved him from shortstop to center field because a 6'9" shortstop doesn't work. Maybe Ellie, but even he had his defensive struggles. So they moved him to center field. And if you ever watched him like track a fly ball in the beginning half of the season, it was hard to watch. Now he got better, and that makes sense. You're adjusting to a new position. You got to give him time. He hits the ball harder than anyone. If I was at second base and I was in the big leagues and O'Neal Cruz was up, I would just tip my hat and walk off the freaking field and retire because I'd be scared shitless if he hit a ball because he smokes the ball, but he's not a good hitter. Like when he gets into one, boy does he get into one. But if you look at him as a complete hitter, I don't think he's that good. And I don't think it's his fault. I think it's just he's a 6'9", like what's the word? Like a unicorn, like his body frame. So of course MLB is going to promote him because when he hits one like 120 off the bat and it takes zero point 0.5 seconds for it to go out of the ballpark, it's a sight to see. So that's where the buzz around him comes up. I just don't think he's ever going to be an all-star. I don't think he's ever I think he's an average baseball player. If he's batting sixth or seventh for you and playing average defense, that's completely fine. But O'Neal Cruz is not. He's never going to be an all star. I never think he's going to be an all star. So that's why I got him as my number two. I love him as the player. I love watching him, but the hype around him is completely ridiculous, and it's only because of his frame. It's only because he's 6'9".
I don't like that I agree with you on this because I'm a big O'Neal Cruz fan, but you're right. He's not a center fielder. He's playing the
Yeah,
wrong position as it is. I think if you're gonna have a guy like O'Neal Cruz, you either keep him at the position that you had him at, because I feel like he could have developed him. He has elite arm strength too. While I'm at it, I think he threw a ball from center field at like 101, and it was the fastest like put out assist in the MLB last season. But either way, I don't want to agree with you on that, but unfortunately, I do. I like that he hits it 120 million miles an hour. I like it that he can throw it like a pitcher from the outfield. I think he's got the potential to turn things around if he's really locked in this off season on his training. I think he's got a chance to change your opinion, but I agree with you and totally see where you're coming from. Now,